Flash now, the Attawapiskat audit bombshell. The federal government has not released it yet, but reports this morning are the audit shows a majority of reserve transactions lack documentation. So let's get to Brigitte Pellerin in Ottawa. Good morning, Brigitte.
Good morning to you, Pat. Happy New Year. I believe that's our first time I see you. Listen, this is a report from Deloitte that was commissioned by the federal government over a year ago, if memory serves, some time ago, into exactly what happened to the $90 million or so that was sent to Attawapiskat between 2005 and 2011-12. That audit has been completed, was completed fairly recently, is with the federal government, and there's no word yet exactly on when they will release it. I've been bugging them again this morning, and I'm still not getting anything more precise as in due time. I expect it will be soon, though, because now we have information coming from La Presse in particular. This morning, apparently, they managed to get a look at it, or somebody told them something about what was in that report, that, yes, the vast majority of the operations and the transactions related to those $90 million over those 5-ish years cannot really properly be accounted for. Now, this is not to say that the money is missing. This is to say that Deloitte cannot confirm that it can trace where that money went. In the majority of cases, they say, that's according to La Presse again this morning, the proper documentation is either not there at all, or it is, very incomplete. So they are missing the paperwork that would account for where that money went for the vast majority of these $90 million. Again, from 2005 to 2011-12. And this is very interesting because this is certainly a question that we here at Sun Media have been following for some time. And that one, the general $90 million to the reserve, but also the salary and the benefits that Chief Spence herself gets and that her partner also receives. And this is something Ezra Levin has been very much working on last week about that. And at a Friday news conference in Ottawa that was held by the NDP along with some chiefs and including a spokesperson for Chief Spence, the question was asked by other reporters, including one from the CBC, asking about the Sun Media reports of those kinds of incomes in the Spence household. And this is the answer that they got from Chief Spence spokesperson.
And so the combined household income was $270,000 tax-free. Can you confirm those figures, and do you think that's justified in light of what she is complaining about?
I'm not here to comment on those.
Are you denying them?
I'm not here to comment on that.
Now, Pat, in their report this morning, La Presse also says that they did try to reach out to Chief Spence for this particular report about the Deloitte audit, and she was unavailable for comment. They did ask her spokesperson, Danny Metara-Wabin, and he said that he would rather focus on the upcoming meeting on Friday on treaty rights. And other than that, this is where they are. They will not comment on those kinds of revelations or questions even, and simply want to focus on something else. Well, I'm sure they do.
It's kind of a one-way street, isn't it? Mm-hmm. They want their audience, but they won't answer any questions heading into that audience.
And at some point, I think that they will have to answer those questions because it simply cannot continue to be that, even Deloitte is a very respectable firm. As you know, if those reports are true, if this really is what's in the report, and we should know soon, then somebody, and that's Theresa Spence, has to answer some pretty tough questions.
Well, and presumably, Brigitte, they're doing business with, I don't know, a contractor or something who's building the houses or facilities or something along those lines. You would think that they would have to report income as well. So you wonder how deep this all goes, this non-reporting of a lot of issues.
You do indeed wonder.
Brigitte, something for us to bring up later on, I'm sure. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
But this is the topic of our web poll today. The question, will the mainstream media objectively report the findings of the most recent Attawapiskat audit when the report is released? Yes or no? Go to sunnewsnetwork.ca to have your say on that. Now, police have launched an investigation into allegations of rail tampering by the Idle No More protesters. Canadian National Rail says some of its workers saw demonstrators meddling with crossing signals at a section of the rail near Belleville, Ontario. Aboriginal protesters blocked the railway on Saturday, disrupting CN and via train service, mainly in the Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal corridor. Police on the scene say that the protest was peaceful, but are now investigating the tampering claims. CN Rail says someone could have been killed, and it's hoping to see prosecution in the case.
And it's a great danger to the public because we have to have absolute confidence in the integrity of our signals if we're going to safely operate trains over that very, very busy corridor. Now, any kind of tampering with signals, railway signals, is an offense, and we will seek to prosecute anyone who tampers with our signals.
CN Rail also says it will take appropriate action to try to recoup its losses from the blockade. Via Rail says it will not. Meanwhile, the Idle No More protests continued across the country over the weekend. Hundreds of demonstrators took part, disrupting bridge crossings, highways in southern Ontario, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, BC. And in case you're just joining us, here's a recap of our top story. An audit of the books in Attawapiskat is also shedding a new light on the Idle No More protests. While the report has yet to be released by the federal government, La Presse in Quebec has managed to get a hold of part of the report, and the information inside is not kind to Chief Teresa Spence. The audit was done by accounting firm Deloitte for the years 2005 to 2011-12. La Presse says the report found that a large majority of the transactions for Attawapiskat were either lacking or missing the proper paperwork. The press also reports that Deloitte also says it can't guarantee that the funds being sent to the reserve are being used properly. Staying with Chief Spence, she's continuing with her so-called hunger strike, despite the Prime Minister agreeing to meet with First Nation leaders on January the 11th. However, she has vowed to continue the so-called strike until the meeting actually takes place. And CN Rail is investigating a possible case of signal tampering. CN Rail spokesperson Jim Feeney says that workers observed the tampering near a location that protesters had blockaded last week. Feeney said in a statement, "It's a serious issue for us because tampering with signals of any kind is illegal. We have to have absolute confidence that our signals are working perfectly in order to operate the trains."